Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. Um, we're here at this panel discussion titled More Than Just a Garden, How Green Spaces Facilitate Healing in Environmental Sacrifice Zones. We have three wonderful human beings here who I would love to ask to introduce themselves and let us know whose native land you're living on. And I can start. My name is Margot Reisner. I'm here on Ohlone land in Berkeley, California. And I'll pass to you, Bobby.
Hello, yep. My name is Bobby House, and I'm here in Sacramento in Padwin land.
Thank you. Can you share what organization you're with, and so speak up for us, Bobby?
Oh yes, sorry, but yes, I'm here with I'm here with Planting Justice, and yes, I'm on Padwin land here in Sacramento.
Thank you, Aaron.
Hi, I'm Aaron de la Cerda. I'm with Acta Verba Youth Urban Farm Project. It's a mouthful. We just go by ANV, and I am currently on Ohlone land.
And Nayasia.
Hi, I'm Nayasia Coleman with AmeriCorps Vista and Insight Garden Program. I'm currently on Ohlone land, but I live in North Carolina on Tutila land.
Thank you all very much. So glad to have you here. And we're going to get into a really interesting panel discussion shortly. And I wanted to give everyone a chance to just do a brief introduction of their organization and let us know what some of the work that y'all are doing is. So Aaron, we're going to start with you. And at this point, I'm going to share some PowerPoint slides for him.
Well, thank you. So while I get set up, again, my name is Aaron. Out here, I'm known by the kids in the community just as Farmer Aaron, or Farmer, or Hey Farmer, whatever the kids remember that day. But as I mentioned, Acta Verba, we're based out of East Oakland. And as our name indicates, Youth Urban Farm Project. So we manage and hold down some spaces for urban farms where kids can come and learn, explore, they get dirty, and then just see, just be in a beautiful outdoor setting. For ANV, it's our mission to just challenge the oppressive dynamics that a lot of kids grow up with in this urban environment, especially in deep East Oakland, where a lot has been forgotten or left behind, or whether intentionally or not. And so we try to provide just a beautiful outdoor space for kids and their families to, like I said, to explore, learn, grow. And so we have a few different programs. So like what you're seeing here, this is our kind of our flagship farm at Tassafaronga Park. It's surrounded by what we call Tassa Village out here in deep East Oakland. This one's about a 1/4 acre. We use all natural farming practices. And what you see here is a group of volunteers helping prepare the pathways for the coming season. So this is early spring of 2019, I believe. So if we want to go to the next one. And so this is another one of our farms, and this is a Wow Farm in West Oakland. So Wow Farm has been farmed land for about 3 years, I believe. Only a few of which have been under the AMV umbrella. Since we started stewarding this land, we went from, it was originally a program working with high school students, that one sunset. And so we took it on as part of our CSA program, Community Supported Agriculture. I'll talk about that in a minute. But we take our after-school kids there, after-school program youth there they get to harvest, explore, try new fruits, and make farm-to-table snacks and just learn general health and nutrition while in like a fun outdoor setting. And this is about 1/8 of an acre, but it's quite productive. This one primarily, while Tassa is more like an outdoor classroom in a farm setting, this one is more production focused farm. And so we focus on producing, like, as I mentioned, for our community supported agriculture program, as well as for sale to locally owned restaurants. All right. Oh, there we go. And as I mentioned, our CSA, or it stands for Community Supported Agriculture. And basically, people pay the farmers ahead of time, and in return for that investment in the farmer, they get the return they get is a share of the harvest. And we do what's called kind of a California model CSA, meaning we kind of pull from a few different farmers, and it's kind of you can participate week to week instead of having to buy all in at the beginning of the year with a large lump sum. You can choose just one share and then skip a week, or do it at your own frequency. And as I mentioned, we aggregate. So that means we're participating with a few different farms. We call them our sister farmers. And that way we're able to support, POC and local farms that were otherwise maybe not have access to this market out here in the Bay Area. Pictured on the left is our original Beatbox crew. We took Beatbox under the AMV umbrella last year in the midst of the pandemic. And we brought on Roya in Chicago, who were beautiful human beings and helped keep the program running. And then on the right, you'll see those are some of our campers. That was, I believe, summer of 2019. They were helping to harvest and sort herbs before we sent out the CSA shares. I should mention that about the CSA that 100% of the profits from that program go into savings accounts that we open up for participating youth. And to be considered a participating youth, they simply need to attend one of our, whether it's after school programs, summer camp, fall camp, winter camp, spring camp, a lot of different opportunities, or just volunteer at the farm on a regular basis. And then we open up an individual saving account, and it's used for educational costs. So that way every kid's able to participate fully in their education. And here what you see is our ANV Summer Camp 2021. So it was an interesting time, trying to host a summer camp, and, with all that was going on, but we had a pod system and it worked out. They did a whole lot over the summer, but just a glimpse, we did archery. I was an archery instructor, which is another hobby of mine aside from farming. And then they did carpentry, they did science, they did a ton of things, podcasting, art, dance, karate, a whole lot of different things. So that was a blast. And we had field trips every week, swimming on every Tuesday. So that was really fun. And I think that was it. I believe that's maybe all I have. But the one farm that I didn't picture was the A's farm. So we also have a partnership with Oakland Athletics where we kind of manage the space and get to showcase the work we do in East Oakland with the kids. During the games, we'll have the kids demonstrate like a planting, tutorial or something like that. Or I'm just present for people to ask the farmer, just how to get involved or anything around farming. So that's a little bit of what A&P does.
Thank you so much, Aaron. It's really such amazing work that y'all are doing. Thank you for sharing. Bobby, can I pass it on to you to talk about planting justice and just a reminder to speak up? It's a little bit hard to hear you.
Okay, no problem. Yep. I'm Bobby House, and I work with Planting Justice. Planting Justice, the main objective is to grow jobs, grow community, and grow food. Those aspects, and within those elements, a lot of work and a lot of foundational work has been done to really build up these objectives, which beginning with growing jobs. One thing at Planting Justice, they really have a strong focus on it, in the sense that in order for us to really develop any kind of sustainability within the people, we have to look at them too as crops and see that they're able to be, they have the nourishments and things they need to be sustainable themselves in order to have the affordability to look into how to affect ecological changes, how to build have the space or leisure to build a garden for themselves. They first have to have some type of economic stability. And so PJ does make sure that it creates a component for persons in particularly rural or urban, urban neighborhoods to be able to connect with and find a means of making an income for themselves while connecting with nature and learning about permaculture and how to work with nature and environment to both better your condition and provide different resources, different avenues of sustainability for yourself. So, and the way that it penetrates the community in that way is it starts with, it has also an educational component in which it goes out. It also is located in East Oakland, whereas through that neighborhood, they make sure that they reach out to various schools. They have a strong educational component where the schools come, like Castlemont and other schools will come and bring some students in, and they will get an opportunity opportunity there at the nursery. Has one of the PJ has like the largest nursery, if I'm not mistaken, in at least the Northern California hemisphere for sure. So the kids are able to come there and learn and get acclimated to gardening and other environmental elements along that line. And that sort of many get an interest from there, from high schools, and begin to sort of change the trajectory of their life and get involved in many of the things that PJ exposed them to from there. And I mentioned that to say that's one element that they look towards, how to grow the jobs. And then with that, it's also a growing community. The one thing is investing in community. And so what PJ does is really makes a effort to invest in the community by making sure that whatever it is, whatever proceeds that it develops as a nonprofit, to make sure that it brings it all right back to the community and to include the people in the community. We look at the way keeping everything within it, that permacultural concept, like PJ acknowledges that we can't. It doesn't attempt to. It doesn't attempt to change. We can't change the entire landscape, but we can amend the soil, if you will. And so sometimes we have to, PJ, make sure to invest in amending the soil in the individuals, and that means by really just being committed to the locations that where they arrive at, to making sure that the community rises, and that's a very important aspect of PJ. And with regards to, of course, growing food, I spoke about the nursery. It's one of the largest nurseries there are, and sell thousands of plants and California natives and medicinals and constantly. So making sure that the prospect of growing food is a continuum. Not to mention the being just at the nursery itself is making sure that each and every one is able to be there and expand their skills and ability to be able to to understand how to grow your own food and develop that sustainability. But also, planting justice, it's like various branches also, and one of them is TYY, is a Transform Your Yard branch within planting justice, and that's the branch that I work with, and within that, our focus is genuinely to just truly try our best to change the landscape, to change the aesthetics of the landscape, to give people a sense of belonging, that a sense of identity within their own domains, so that they can feel so we've taken a look at some of the negative side effects of the dismal environments that we grew up in, particularly, like can't help but mention being in Deep East Oakland. We so to offset some of that broken glass effect of people having you see a hopeless state, you have a hopeless mentality, you create hopeless actions, and so we want to change that narrative with TYY, change that narrative by doing our best to bring forth and change the aesthetic landscape of people's front yards by letting them wake up to come and see something that's edifying to them rather than distracting from them. And that's one of the aspects that TYY promotes with regards to bringing that service to our communities. There's really no end to the way in which Planting Justice has continued to reach out to, particularly like the underserved in the communities. And one thing that is noticed is that if you really were to look at where the underserved are, there's kind of a warehouse full of underserved people called prisons. And so PJ also has a very strong component of going back into the prisons, which they have a very strong relationship with IGP, who modeled that, and that Planting Justice continues to carry on that work as well, and going to the prisons and other places to bring people out of that mire and prepare them for when they're home to have a feasible opportunity to really make a difference and show the change that's been made in them while here in society. So those are just a few of the points of
Thank you, Bobby. There's honestly so much that Planting Justice does. I don't know how y'all do it. Like, you got the farm, the nursery, the partnership with Insight Garden Program, with Segurate Land Trust, with Lead to Life. Like, it's deep, this work. There's a lot that Planting Justice is doing. So thank you for giving us a little window into that. And we're definitely going to dive into a lot of that work in our panel conversation very shortly. So Nayasia, can you talk a little bit about Insight Garden Program?
Yes, definitely.
And I'll share my screen right now as well.
Okay, awesome. Well, again, my name is Nayasia Coleman. I'm an AmeriCorps Vista representative, and I've been working with Insight Garden Program for about a year and a half as their programs and community outreach coordinator. Insight Garden Program's mission is to facilitate programs that reconnect people in prison and in reentry to self, community, and the natural world. If you look at the images on the screen, you'll see some of our participants very happy and excited about a harvest of what I think is green onions, but I don't have the green thumb in the group. And then on the right side, there's an image of our garden at San Quentin in the Bay Area. IGP is at a lot of sites across California. We're in a various amount of different prison facilities. We're in facilities that work with women specifically. We're in medical facilities. We're working on bringing back our youth program, but our youth facility will be closing soon, OH Close. And we're also in like maximum security facilities as well. And so our program is really based around a garden. And so we work with participants to conceptualize, design, and then create a community garden on the yard at their facility. So it's really a hands-on process. We do landscaping design, and we really get into talking to them about what kind of space they want to cultivate. So, really thinking about the shapes. How do we want the garden to look? How do we want it to make us feel? And then what kind of plants do we want to have? And this is all a collaborative process as a community. Our curriculum is broken into 4 arcs. The first arc is environmental systems education and really trying to cultivate a reconnection to nature. And so in the first arc, we're really getting into like the basics. What is soil? Why is that important? What are the parts of a plant? How does photosynthesis work and how do plants grow? And really cultivating that sort of youthful curiosity about the earth that's all around us all. And then the second part builds on that. And then we get more into permaculture training. And so that's utilizing the garden as a classroom. And so it's really going into the garden and taking what we've learned and then practically utilizing that in that space together. And then from there, once we've really got them into the garden and they're very connected to what's growing there, we take it inward and we call that inner gardening. And I think that we consider that really like the foundation of our work. And that's working with our participants to build emotional intelligence and really think about themselves as the plant. And, where do I need more nourishment? Where could I use more water in the sense of emotion or connection to my emotions? What might I need to prune out of my life so that I can live my best life, whatever that looks like for me? And then finally, there's reentry readiness, because working inside of a prison, our goal is that at some point everyone goes home. And so how do we help prepare our participants to leave prison and take the things that they've learned in the garden and be able to utilize that to make a living, but also to positively impact their community? Bobby spoke to it in some ways with our partnership with Planting Justice, but it's making sure that when our participants get out, they can go and work with organizations like Planting Justice to utilize the green skills they learned in prison to really make an impact on communities that need it, and often communities that look like them. For us, we feel like you can't really talk about environmental sustainability or environmental stewardship wholeheartedly without addressing historically how racism, capitalism, patriarchy, and colonialism have weaponized land and have weaponized nature in specific ways against certain populations, usually communities of color. And so a lot of our work is really bridging that gap to bring a lot of the sacred back into our work and really living at the intersection of environmental, criminal, and transformative justice to create a space where we can reconcile a lot of the heinous things that have happened to people using land. And that is a little bit about IGP. I could talk all day, but if you'd like to know more about us, you can check us out at www.insightgardenprogram.org. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nay. I don't think I mentioned this at the beginning, but I also work with Insight Garden Program and wanted to build this panel and bring these folks together to talk about those intersections that Nayasia was talking about. I think working in environmental sustainability, it's very common for folks to be disenfranchised and marginalized. And the work of these three organizations is really about empowerment, bringing communities opportunities to connect with land, to connect with earth, to grow their own food, grow their own medicine. And we're all working with different groups of people at different stages in their life. Acta Verba is working more with youth and folks who might be at risk of incarceration. Insight Garden Program is working with people who are incarcerated, and Planting Justice is working with a lot of folks who are getting out. So I see a lot of crossover between these three organizations, and I'm just really excited to have y'all at the table together. I wanted to start, this is, a conference on farming and soil, and I just wanted to start by addressing some of the environmental and biological, ecological impacts of the work that you do. Like, what have you seen how have you seen the land change? How have you seen human bodies change? How have you seen animals and plants heal on the land that y'all are working on? Aaron, can I start with you to answer that question?
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, big question. But it's interesting because the first thing that comes to mind is being a farmer and, and somebody who works with youth. It's like you don't see everything it's like you do things day to day, of course, but you're thinking, seasons and years and stuff, not just for the plant's sake, but for the child's sake. And so it's like being in it, it's hard to see like that growth. It's like somebody else who comes in the beginning, walks away, comes back at the end, like, oh wow, look at all that growth. It's a little tough to answer the question, like what does that healing look like and how has it shown up? But one thing that does come to mind is just like the fact that what we're doing is creating the new normal for the kids in our neighborhood, the kids in our community. I didn't grow up in a place. I'm from Fresno, California. It's hot, flat, and lots of ag, but also a lot of pollution. And even though ag was a part of like the economy and like the fabric of the city, like it wasn't present. Like beautiful outdoor spaces wasn't really a thing for me. And I think that's the case in a lot of inner city places. And so out here in the Deep East, like our goal is to just hold it down as far as providing a safe, beautiful green space for the kids to do what it is they do, just be kids. And then we just present the farming as another everyday part of life. And so I think I've been with A&V for about 5 years now. And in my 5 years, I've seen, kids grow up. And it's really dope to see that just coming to the farm has become a part of just their normal, like hearing their conversations, like, oh, no, I'm going to hang out at the farm for a bit, but then we'll go ride bikes, or then I'll meet you at the store. And, it's just, that is so cool to me that we're just kind of planting that right there. And I know pun intended, but like, just putting that right there. And then it just naturally, they absorb it into part of their everyday life. So in my viewpoint, and this is why I do the work I do, farming, growing, understanding, and like having a connection with nature is definitely setting them on a very healing path. Like, the many generations before have done a lot to damage the earth, the environment, and kind of create this built world that wasn't really conducive to like nourishing the whole person. you know, you're alone a child. And so if we can create this little pocket of green, this little pocket of like a beautiful place to grow and plant and learn and fail and, you know, and continue on from it, then I think, yeah, we're doing our job. And it feels like, you know, we're doing just that. We've seen a lot of kids, you know, come and go, and, you know, I'm not going to pretend that A and B and the farm was the reason for their success, but we'd like to think that we helped contribute to that. And no, that's just speaking to the person, but to speak to the soil real quick, we're very fortunate that like the land we're sitting on right now has been, you know, a city park for some time. So it's fairly good soil, but, you know, we had, you know, symptoms of an urban environment, trash blowing in, you know, just flooding because of just the seasonal rains and improper drainage, all that. But we've been able to help mitigate that using, you know, bioswales and just like native farming practices. And so we're seeing a return of wildlife on our farm, you know, birds, we have our bees are happy, we have a lot more hummingbirds and you know, butterflies stopping in. So we're definitely, over the past 5 years, I've definitely seen an increase in just beauty, like the outdoor space, you know, in our little corner of Oakland. And that's just task there because we also have the 2 other farms that I had mentioned. But yeah, that's my thoughts on it.
Thanks for that, Aaron. I'm not sure where Margot went, but I figured, Bobby, would you like to chime in on the ways that, you know, planting justice biologically and ecologically, how does that impact your work?
Yes. Yeah, I would say I kind of hinted at some of it in the first introduction, but biologically, I would say, for one, we have a very large nursery we spoke about, and um, the nursery itself, with so many, with our client, our staff there, it creates a. First, I'm speaking to the biologically, just having that kind of serenity, like that kind of space to really just separate from so much of the day-to-day stresses and anxieties of life, and yet still, you know, and yet still be a part of something that's still moving forward, yet not having to be plugged into the daily, you know, that cog of this constant activity. So biologically, we sort of have this a meditational sort of pull on us to sort of recenter ourselves every day, because we make it a practice to try and meet at the nursery. And it's odd just how that green space, as I heard mentioned, can really kind of get into your soul and affect you as you move forward. Like for me and many other persons, there some that also, as myself, may have been through, had their own traumatic experiences, and it's very it's quiet into the soul in that aspect. And so what we try to do is recreate that for others, since we know we experience it personally. And again, with me at TYY, we branch out and go and create community gardens and in-home gardens in other places to try and emulate that sort of sense of serenity for other people, and give them that one sacred space in the midst of a lot of chaos sometimes, you know, at times. So in the midst of doing that work, we can kind of we learn to see a sort of a system of exchange. Like when you start to show that you care for people, they start to kind of show that they care back, and in turn seem like they start caring a little more about themselves. And I use that as an example, like a yard. A person can have a yard and say they just want a couple of just a few medicinals, or some basic herbs or something in the yard. And once you come and you show them that care and attentiveness, and say, oh, you know, we're not just going to do it, we're going to give you a little design, we'll throw some mulch there, you know, create a new space for you. And at the end of it all, at first you might see persons be maybe not as interested. You may see some youngsters or some teenagers or whatever that may be the family of the client, but they're watching and they're seeing how you interact and watching the end result. And I love what was spoken previously, in the sense that, yeah, when someone sees something that is at its beginning stage, I call it the ugly stage. No one really pays much attention to it. So they go away and they come back and they see the beautified stage. And then they're like, wow, what did I miss? And so to have that, wow, what did I miss effect on the youth, and as well as to create that renewed sense of value in clients' lives, like that's some of the things that's really rewarding, at least for me and others that at PJ that bring this to the communities, and to see people want to get interested. So I believe that begins to create like a real sense of healing biologically at that level, and then ecologically, just truly changing the landscape 1 yard at a time, just 1 yard at a time. Because today, if we look, one thing I've noticed is, I actually love this. I don't want to say love, because I'm sure they may have various of opinions, but I appreciate what they call gentrification, right? Because I believe in, I truly believe that we need biodiversity. I believe that biodiversity works amongst humans as it does everywhere else, and we need each other to to stay strong, and to keep certain unwholesome pathogens from coming in to just eat at one specific race group or ethnicity of people. That's what I believe. And so when I see newer persons coming into urban neighborhoods and things of that nature, I look, and the first thing I notice is the first thing that goes up is the gardens, the front yard gardens. And you can almost as clearly drive down most urban streets, and you can tell who are the new residents just by looking at the yard. And so many of the older residents' yards are just still in shambles, not because they don't have any interest in seeing it, because maybe sometimes that education or that knowledge hasn't been brought to a person, to their power, ability, and how inexpensive it is to really transform their yard, to really make waking up in the morning and stepping out in their front yard a pleasant experience, rather than something that you might subconsciously dread. You don't want to see that dismal yard that you had there before, whatever that you have to see. So in that way, I've watched and had the opportunity to drive away from a couple of blocks where 2 or 3 yards have been changed, and say, wow, look, that this little community right here, in this little corner of the world, these people have a higher sense of self-esteem and appreciation for both themselves and the environment as a result of the work that was done. So, like, for me, I couldn't ask for much more than that in this regard. Right? So.
Thanks, Bobby. I lost my internet for a minute, and I lost y'all. But Nay, did you want to add to this question about ecological impacts?
Yeah, I'll add a little bit. In regards to IGP's work, prisons are intentionally made invisible by our society and placed in the most nature deficit spaces. And it's proven, that being outdoors and connecting with nature really positively impacts mental and physical health. And our gardens try to focus on bringing native and medicinal plants into spaces that were really created to keep people caged in and limited. So our work does the opposite of that, increasing endorphins and really helping our participants release their anger, fear, and stress within. So not only does this help their, not only does it help participants biologically, by introducing more movement and fresh air and meditation and mindfulness, but also really positively impacting the ecological health of the area by reintroducing plants that are bringing animals and animals that people hadn't seen in years, pollinators and better air quality to the area. Aaron had mentioned some hummingbirds, and that is a bird that is very close to our hearts in IGP, because that's usually one of the birds that appears once we place our gardens, that our participants really get a lot of joy from seeing. And so, the hummingbirds and the pollinators that are being brought into the space, it's just really creating this newness and this beauty and somewhat of a whimsical nature about the space that we're able to create together as a community.
Thank you, Nay. Yeah, I think it's so important to talk about these ecological impacts. Obviously, this is a huge part of why we do the work. And a lot of y'all have already touched on just the emotional healing that happens. And I think that's part of the conversation that isn't always addressed in these food and farming conversations is the impact of education, the impact of emotional healing, of mindfulness, of all those things that are embedded within our work. So I'm wondering, I'll just leave this open to anyone who wants to jump in. Maybe there's something else that you haven't touched on yet, just talking about the emotional impacts and the emotional healing that happens on our farms or in our gardens or wherever it is that you're working. What have you seen in yourself even, or in your community? Like how has this work been emotionally healing? I'll leave it open to any of y'all.
I can, Bobby, are you going to jump in?
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, like for many of our participants, they're bringing varied levels of experience with nature. So like some are coming from sacrifice zones themselves, communities that have not gotten a lot of attention when it comes to really beautifying the space. But many are also coming from cultural identities that rely heavily on growing their own food in various ways. So like maybe like immigrant communities or indigenous communities. And so what we've often find is that like connections to home and family as we navigate the practical and inner gardening aspects of our work. And there's something about like putting your hands in dirt that really brings you back to center. And for our participants, you know, often this is the one place within the prison society where they feel like they can like let that mask down. And really like things like race and neighborhood or affiliation, like all those things fall away and participants tap into the spirit through the earth, and being able to really like nurture a seed to life impacts us all in these really profound ways. And so it's really beautiful being able to be in that space and really working together to shed the inner things so that we can be better stewards, not only of ourselves, but like of the earth that's around us.
Go ahead, Bobby. I saw you unmute.
Oh yes, yes, yes. I definitely identify with that, and I say that it's very just been really it's self-renewing and very gratifying just to see, just to be able to bring another level of consciousness to people. You know, because I speak for myself, like I had never heard really of gardening or any of that until I heard of it. And that was through IGP, until I heard of it through IGP, until I heard of it and began to really look into just even hearing about it then and even learning of it. I remember that there was a time when I couldn't actually foresee uh, being a part of like farmer gardening or anything, because to me I thought it was set aside for a culture that wasn't my own. So to bridge the cultural divide or the cultural gaps, to show like this farming and or this gardening and this lifestyle is not far removed from this so-called hustler lifestyle or self-independent lifestyle that you think that you're having, because it's as independent as you are. Can I get a salad? Just get me a salad. No, no, go to the store. I need a salad. So to see people like embrace the simple concepts of of what it is to really be independent at this level of knowledge, it's like that's both for myself is edifying and extremely edifying to have the ability to both be a part of this culture and share it with others and make it okay. So, and yeah, that's it's heartwarming to hear people now come talk to me about some plant they tried to plant in their grandmother's yard, or tell me about something they noticed. You know, so yeah, that to me is, and the way I see it in other people's lives as well, is just that yeah, that's very renewing, like wholesome, just to see that this yet again we kind of got something that we can claim back, you know, and that's a milestone within itself, because farming or gardening and all that was completely stereotyped and cast away, typecast in a way that was completely, yeah, just at odds with many people of color, particularly. So.
Yeah, thank you. Erin, did you want to add to this conversation as well?
Yeah, just to the idea of like healing and the work we do. It's interesting. It made me think like when I first came on, I was thinking, I got into agriculture in third grade, luckily, because it's a part of like the school program I was involved in. But and so when I started this line of work, I was thinking like, hey, if I can get like, a handful of kids that want to be farmers, like I'm helping to heal the food system. And at this point, I've opened my eyes up to the smaller wins, the smaller things that we're healing about the kids. Cause like, as soon as we're born into American society, we're imparted with this idea of rugged individualism. It's me, mine, myself, I, that's the narrative we're taught. We're kind of pulling the veil back on that these days in a lot of different ways. But specific to this work, it's like if I can help kids to see, heal that mindset of rugged individualism, help them see that they're a part of the we, the us, like, we're all in this ecosystem. We all play a part in this, whether or not we see it. And like a small example is like I have a no kill policy on my farm. So we do snail hunts regularly. And so instead of setting out poisons or, finding them and stomping on them or squishing them, it just grosses me out and it seems kind of cruel. We just we do snail hunts, see who catches the most, and then we like rehome them. And it's like at first it was like ways like I got snails and I got kids that need things to do, so I connected the two. But it's really dope to see like when a kid comes up, like, hey, look, I found a snail, but I'm not going to squish him because that's not nice. He deserves to live. It's like cool. Like you're understand that child showing me that they have an understanding that this is a living thing. It plays a role just like the child does. And so they're going to go ahead and place it somewhere where it can continue to play its role, And so it's like even those little things, like I feel like we got to like really look for those little wins because they really begin to add up, And as far as like healing just this kind of toxic mindset of rugged individualism that we're all kind of given as soon as we're just conscious of the society we exist in. So yeah, that was.
Thanks, Erin. Yeah, I love those little wins. There's so many small ones like at Insight Garden Program. It's, someone with like face tattoos all of a sudden just being like, oh, a hummingbird, and just tapping into that childlike joy. It's beautiful to see. I have a question for all of you. I know we need to sort of wrap up here soon, and I wanted to give a chance for the audience to ask any questions too, but I just wanted to ask y'all one more question about your experience as people of color in this work of environmentalism and ecological land stewardship that has been a very white dominated narrative, even though historically it has been done by people of color. So I know, Bob, you already sort of talked about this a little bit, but I would love to hear from all of you about your experience as people of color in this food, farming, ecological justice movement. Anyone, feel free to take it away.
I don't mind. I can start. I would just lead with Fannie Lou Hamer, right? So, I had learned about Fannie Lou Hamer. It was I had read a while ago. She had mentioned about trying to get everyone to return back to farming and agriculture so that we can take control of being able of our food, our food resources. So we won't be totally dependent on the system that's at play and those in privileged positions to decide who gets what. And so she had started this sort of campaign or movement to get people back farming, completely met with tons of resistance and tons of scorn and ridicule. And it broke my heart to watch her go through that, reading it in this day and age. Because I'm like, wow, look, she was spot on if we just would have listened. But she was a little bit before her time in that. So I led with her to give her honors because she, to me, was the first person to really try to stand up against the stigma that was to come and that we all inherited by us not listening to her back then. So with that being said, like, yes, as a person of color, I mean, I see, let's first go back historical to a little bit of legacy real quick. And we know that the age old pitting one against another has always been an effective way to maintain power by those that have it and want those that fight for it to stay fighting for it and never obtain it. So I've watched how, to me, it seemed like the people of color, the black Africans Americans and brown Mexican Americans, like in America, it seemed like we've sort of we've sort of taken turns at doing each other's labors in a sense, and that's how it was pitted and designed or shown to the world to say like, okay, well, if we take this agricultural route and get back into it, then it's like we're taking a step back because they had created a sense, what had been created was a form of, I think, exploitation on the farm again, and now being exploited by our brown, people exploiting our brown and Latino brothers and sisters. So for us to even try and think to step back into it again, it's like, of course, we're putting back on, we're stepping back in time instead of moving forward. So today, what I'm really pleased is that to see that the both black, brown, and of course my native brothers and sisters, like we're all together in understanding that we've been fed a false narrative, and that the truth of the matter is that you can have all the retail you want. If you can't grow it out of the soil, then you have nothing. And so for me, as a person of color, like it's been very empowering to realize that, you know, I do have the ability to repatriate or rematriate some of our land, right? Just by being able to reap the benefits of the nutrients out of it by growing my own food. I might not can own the land. I mean, being realistic, I might not can own all of it, but I can own. And unfortunately, when you go look more into the Fannie Lou Hamer and everything else, you'll look to see that you don't even own the mineral rights of your land. You can have a land, if you find gold, the gold will belong to the person, to someone else. It won't belong to you because you don't own the mineral rights. So the only thing we can really extract of mineral is vegetation. So to see that I, as a person of color, to realize that there's a gold mine in my backyard and that I have access to it, yeah, that's been wholesome for me, and to be able to let everyone else know that we've been fed a false narrative that's keeping us from accessing a form of stability that we're in dire need of. As it's let me be very bold and pleased to stand in this day and age and amongst the culture tie and the Black permaculturists. So, yeah, that's some portion of what I have to speak today. So.
Right on, Bobby. Thank you. Aaron or Nayasia, did you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, if one, I'll say, like, I really like the way Bobby put that. It's like, you know, having a gold mine in your backyard, because this is exactly what it is. It's like we exist to do a lot of things, but in order to exist, we need to feed ourselves. And why not just cut out that middle person and get straight to the source of what my body needs to nourish itself? So that's a beautiful way to put it. But like, just speaking to the narrative and how it's been largely white, it's interesting because, like, we always hear this idea of, you know, the average age of the farmer is getting older and older, and, you know, there's this crisis where we need more farmers. It's, well, if we simply like redefine what a farmer is from being what it currently is defined as, it's like, if we're real about it, it's a wealthy white landholder is what is called, that's what we call farmers. But if we look at the people who are actually doing the work, the ones who hold the knowledge, the ones who, you know, help us like keep society fed, you know, they look a lot like the people of the global majority. They look like us, and so that's like an interesting thing that, you know, I've begun to see, you know, behind, like, again, peek behind that veil of like the dominant narrative, and seeing that, like, you know, there's a lot of people who look like me doing this work. We're not provided the proper stage, and so I really appreciate being a part of this, you know, because this is a platform on which our voices can be heard. So that's one thing, and it's like in our line of work here at AMV, we're very much so about just being real. What we speak with candor, and you know, there have been several occasions where I like to not for the sake of putting people on blast or calling somebody out, but just to help support a more equitable narrative. Like, we tend not to use the words food desert. It's a very popular like buzzword in this line of work, in food work. Food deserts indicate something natural, because deserts are naturally occurring. Like, we're very intentional with saying, you know, food apartheid, because it's controlled. It was designed like this, and we're trying to overthrow that apartheid. We're trying to do for ourselves what others, you know, are trying to keep us from doing. And so that's one thing. Or the idea, I'll say it, permaculture, you know, like that was simply indigenous farming practices stolen, you know, appropriated, repackaged, and then put back out as permaculture. Those are simply farming practices that have been done for, you know, hundreds or thousands of years. by the people who original, tenants of this land. So, just speaking to like how we got to shift the narrative, and it's like I think it's a beautiful thing that y'all hold the space, and that we're doing that now. We're kind of hijacking the narrative from what it's been for the longest and hasn't been working, and kind of just misses so many crucial people, to now we're able to provide that platform. So thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Thank you so much for saying that about permaculture too. That's such an important conversation that we have only just skimming the surface of that. We'll talk about that on a whole other conference about just the word permaculture and that whole movement. Thank you. Nayasia, what would you like to add?
Oh yeah. I'd say like to do this work as a person of color, it can be difficult because you're navigating a lot, right? For me, it's like many of the people who are in this work are really doing it because it's like when I think about what a farmer or a gardener looks like, you don't think of a person who looks like me, right? And so a lot of the times, especially when we're thinking about like environmental justice and gardening organizations, it's like people want to do good, but it may not necessarily be like their own personal experience, right? And it's like, for people of color in this work, it's like we're doing it for the survival of ourselves and our communities. And so it's like personal work that's intersecting with the professional because we have to make money to be able to survive in this community in a capitalistic society. But it's personal nonetheless. And so I think that makes the stakes like that much higher and the work that much harder. It's like really me doing this work for the Black children that are gonna have to live on this earth after me, and wanting it to still be here for them and wanting them to be able to be a part of a world that celebrates them fully, and really wanting to tap more into indigenous and tribal ways of being where they showed nature the utmost reverence and it was seen as something that's sacred. When I think about my history, my family was in the United States in North Carolina in the 1700s. And I can think on one hand how many members of my family have ever owned land, and even thinking about the concept of owning land in and of itself, like that being like a goal, thinking of the history of America is just so hard for me. But also like you do want to have something, right, that you can pass down to the generations that come after you. And so it's like my relationship when it comes to nature is like historically very complicated and emotionally charged. And, every day that I choose to show up and to connect with nature is taking back what racism and the myth of white supremacy has took from my people, right? A people that, that knew that being able to cultivate and fertilize the land was something that was of value, right? And that very thing was taken and twisted and turned in a way that is now something that we're having to reclaim, right? We're having to come to Black people and tell them that working the land is not equal servitude. That those things are not mutually exclusive. That might be the history of the land, but we can choose to show up in a way that is coming from a space of liberation, through working the land that we live on, that is a part of us every day when we breathe that air, that becomes a part of our chemical makeup, right? So like this is all of our land, it's all of our community, and it's a part of us. And I think that that's the way that I view it every day when I show up for this work.
Thank you so much, Nay. Thank you for sharing. Honestly, I really, really appreciate your perspective, all of y'all's perspective. I see Miguel is here. Are we out of time? Oh, I think you're on mute.
I want to thank you everyone for joining the conference, and I think that it's very important the work that you have been doing. I have been working with Planting Justice for, I don't know, for 11 years ago. They were in our conferences. Justice began with seeds. So we know these organizations for a long time, and we keep track of what they are doing. That's amazing. And we support their work in any way we can, And this is one way, like featuring speakers from these organizations, from these projects in this conference. And I hope to continue working with you all in the future, so not all to connect more with you. And thank you so much for today's presentation. And I hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much, Miguel. And I know we wanted to open it up to questions from the audience. We didn't have time, but if folks want to email me any questions or to get in touch with Bobby or Aaron or Nayasia, they can email me at Margot, MARGOT, at insightgardenprogram.org. And we all have websites that y'all can check out. Maybe consider donating to some of our organizations. We're all nonprofits. Your donations make huge impact on the work that we're able to do. So thank you for this opportunity. Thank y'all for sharing this space with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.